I thought briefly about a recent project I had going on at work. I wanted to get some folks to come out for a training event, and we raise money for children's hospitals, so I wanted to give them the opportunity to come and tour the hospital, which the money is going to be going for helping. And you'd think this would be a simple thing to do, but it turns out it wound up being a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails, and it was probably about 150 emails back and forth by the time I finished planning this 20-person event. Now, I didn't really do very much. All I did was reach out and say who's coming, get me the names, and let me know if you need a hotel, and if you're going to be doing this particular training event, because it's hosted by the state, you're going to have to fill out an application. So it's just a few things, fill out the application, let me know if you need a hotel, let me know if you're going to be in town 1 or 2 days, and let me know if you're going to do the hospital tour and the training event or just the training event. But it turns out people procrastinate. They wait until the last minute to figure out if they're going to respond at all. They put somebody's name in the hat, and then they change their mind and say, that person isn't going after all. We're going to change it and make it somebody else instead. Or they leave out important details which were asked for. After all, I can't book a hotel for somebody if I don't know exactly when they're going to be arriving in town. Things like that. And I got to thinking about how we tend to listen so we can respond instead of listening so we can understand sometimes. So instead of reading something end to end, making a solid point to understand, and then making a rational response, we tend to quickly skim over it and then make a hasty response after we procrastinate for a while. Then the response usually is omitting some kind of detail that's needed, or maybe it didn't quite get the correct message to begin with, and then somebody has to circle back and ask another probing question or get some clarity, and next thing you know, something which should be 20 emails is 200 emails, and something which should be figured out and laid to rest over the course of a day or maybe a week turns into something which has a 1 month long planning phase. And so I was thinking about how important it is to take your time, pay attention to what you're doing, and then get things right the first time. How important it is to pay attention and then respond in a thoughtful way instead of trying to respond in a hasty way. I've also thought about how, especially in an office environment where you send a lot of emails and you communicate a lot of things, well, usually the things I communicate to others in a business environment are not things that I've come up with myself. Usually it's cascading information, not creating information. So the question of usefulness is really all about how do I package that information in a way that is easy to digest, easy to understand, and kind of has a good user interface. And typography, text, learning how to say more with less is important. Punctuation, if you make an Excel spreadsheet, knowing how to put colors in it and different features that'll make it easy to read at a glance without somebody having to study it to figure out what it is they're looking at. I see a lot of situations where somebody will roll out something and they'll say, hey, look at this. This is going to help you do your job better. So take a quick look at it. And it looks like it's a wall of text. There's all sorts of things going on. And my first thought is, what even am I looking at? I feel confused before I even figured out, what it's about, much less how I'm going to somehow use it to do my job better. And there's a lot of situations like that where the message should be simple enough that people can easily understand it without having to figure out, what the message even is about before they can, get around to, to trying to figure out how to use it. It's kind of like a game where, maybe it's a really good game. Like EVE Online comes to mind. EVE Online is a really good game, but you load it up and you're gonna make spaceships and sell things and fly your spaceships around, and you realize you don't even know how any of it works. So you have to watch a bunch of tutorials and you have to study it, and it just starts to feel like it's not worth it, because do you want to have to spend a bunch of time learning how to play a game, and hours later you still haven't gotten around to start playing yet because you're still trying to figure out what the buttons and the menus do? Or do you enjoy a game where you can just load in, and maybe there's a lot of things you don't understand, there's things that involve skill you don't have, but the nuts and bolts of being able to just log in and have a good experience, well, that's there. You can get the gist of what you're doing right away. It doesn't feel like there's a huge learning curve there. I think that's more sticky. So learning how to, write a shorter letter, sometimes that's important, because people who write, a wall of text kind of get lost in translation. If I see a page-long letter from an employee that's frustrated about something going on at work, and there's no punctuation in it, it's a page long and there's no paragraphs in it, it's kind of unlikely that I'm going to start off with a particularly good perception of the person, because my thought's going to be, well, if they can't write a legible letter to the corporate office, then I don't know if their concern is necessarily all that well founded, because they're starting right off by not really demonstrating particularly good judgment. Not that any of this is a particularly big deal, but as I record this video, I think to myself, I don't really have a lot going on other than random office stuff, and that's usually not particularly interesting or cause for lengthy conversation. I wonder what it is that one might do to make their life more interesting sometimes. You ever feel like you look at your life and it just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot worthy of sharing? Sometimes I feel like that. Trying to jump up onto a ledge, can't get up there. Sometimes you hit an invisible wall. Looks like you can go, but you can't because there's a wall there. And that's maybe that's something to talk about. Sometimes in life we hit invisible walls too. You think that you should be able to do something, but you just can't do it. maybe the reason why you can't is because there's an invisible wall. You think it's just because you need to try harder, but really it's because the universe has a different plan for you. So maybe the best plan is to go around sometimes. Don't keep on fighting against the invisible walls, because you will never be able to break through them, no matter how much you jump up and down trying to do it. Sometimes life isn't about great accomplishments. Sometimes it's about just doing ordinary things. And it's about doing them in a way that is graceful and patient and consistent. And it's about not projecting your own insecurities or ego onto the things that you do. Because when we feel uncertain of life and then we project that into things that we're doing with other people, then that can erode our ability to do a good job at what we're doing, because we're trying to maybe make up for something that seems to be missing in our life by filling the void with something that we're doing in society, doing at work or doing with friends or something. Like we go into experiences hoping to have some kind of an outcome that's going to maybe make things right or balance out perceived inequities in our lives. And that's not really what life is about. Life is about service, but it's not about gratification. It's not about vindication. It's not about ego. So maybe we sometimes don't feel like we're having a mountaintop experience. We're just having a normal experience at the office, sending a few hundred emails and following up on things that probably, if we were honest, don't even really need follow-up, just because it's our job, and we get a little bit lost in the mundane. But after all, whether it's a walk in the park or another weekday at the office or another trip down a familiar road or another company with someone who we have seen many times before, I guess it all boils down to life is filled with things that do not really need our interpretation. They don't need to be more or less than exactly what they are. When we look at everything in life as a natural part of the world as it ought to be, then we stop saying, well, if people did this or that thing differently, then life would be better. I could talk about having to send a bunch of emails because people don't get it the first time or something like that. And the crazy thing is, if I didn't have to do that because people were just brutally efficient, then I probably wouldn't have a job doing what I do. So maybe we do want people to be a little bit ignorant and stuck in their old habits after all, because it gives us something to do with our days. We want a small dose of problems because it gives us something to manage, something to do, a reason to get up every day and say, I think that I will go do it once again. In any case, as always, wherever you find yourself, try to find peace, happiness, harmony in all that you do. Till next time, thanks so much for watching.